Alright, you guys, today is going to be a much more different video than I had initially planned. So, inspired by a couple of things, namely the Frostnite challenge, now with Taste the Stew, if you survive 30 minutes in single mission to top it off, you can get pretty much any of the Lunar Dragon Llama weapon stuff. And I say it so weirdly because the Lunar Llamas have also come to the shop, which are giving the Chinese New Year weapons from the event section in the collection book. You can see all of the different dragon weapons, and then there's also a pistol that's kind of sort of secret, but it's actually main game. So you might even have the Dragon's Breath pistol, seeing as it's, well, main game, so you might have gotten it from any normal llama. And one of the most notable things about the Dragon set is the fact that they have fire damage. Almost all all the other weapons have fire damage exclusively, and they actually deal affliction damage. Now, that shouldn't mean anything to you. That's not exciting news. That was exciting news when they came out over 2 years ago, but it's not anything special in today's standards, and that's definitely one of the things that's going to set the tone for the rest of today's video. Another thing that's notable about these weapons is they have the on-kill spawn Roman candle on the enemy location, and the fact that these weapons have a built-in affliction damage. So you can always have damage to afflicted targets because all of the dragon weapons are meant to set their enemies on fire. And there you go. You can see that the Roman candles are not that powerful, but they do spawn when you get a kill with an 8-second cooldown. So that's cool, I guess. And I did mention that this video is going to be a lot more different than I had planned, and that's simply because I was going to record all of these weapons as a best perks series, show you the best perks for the, let me show it, the Dragon's Fist, or, because that's in the shop right now, or the Dragon's Tooth, which, I haven't ever had a copy of, but in reality, after using every single one of these weapons, they are just terrible. They're so, okay, I was going to say they're bad, and I would say they are, but in my opinion, I want to give them as much credit as possible, and what I'll argue is that instead of saying they're bad, I'd argue that they are outdated. Power creep is a real thing. Most of the weapons that are in today's game are very, very powerful. In fact, in this same section of the collection, if I just scroll down to the mythic weapons, every one of these outclasses every single one of the dragon weapons. Of course they do. Why wouldn't they? The military weapons, I believe, came after the dragon weapons. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. All of these are just like the best versions of their guns in some cases. But my point is the dragon weapons were one of the first sets I remember ever hearing about. I think they are very, very old weapons in the game, and they were spec'd appropriately to their time. And I think what Epic should do, I doubt that they'll ever listen to my opinion, but I'm going to state it anyway, that I think all of these weapons simply need no more than a damage increase, and in some cases a range increase. So I'll point out the Dragonfire, for example, which notably is the only weapon not named Dragon's something. You've got the Dragon's Fist, you got the Dragon's Claw, you've got the Dragon's Might. All of them are Dragon something, but the Dragon's Shotgun is a Dragonfire. Anyway, my point is, this weapon is honestly a really amazing looking weapon. Look at this. Gold, silver, it's a red dragon. My skin in game makes it look pretty badass, I think, with the nice white crystal and whatever. But it's got little to no range, terrible damage, and a pretty unexceptional fire rate. And I think that, like, a weapon like this, I would love to use this every time that I need a fire shotgun. This would be a great decision. I would love to use a weapon like this, but it's just bad. It doesn't hit very hard, it doesn't shoot very far away, and it's just bad. There's no reason to use this. In fact, I'd argue that instead of no reason to use it, it's just too weak. You can't even make this work. You will die in-game trying. Like I said, I wanted to make a best perks for all these weapons, but they're so awful that I simply can't recommend any of them. Now, a lot of people, and what this video is titled, have asked me which one should I get from the quest, and from that, I do believe I can help you answer. I can't specifically recommend any of them. They're just not that great. But what I can say is, I could show you a bit of gameplay and talk through all of the individual weapons and what they're good for. So, right off the bat, I never tried out the spear. I never tried out the spear, I'll admit that. It was like, no spear has ever impressed me. I've never heard of the Dragon's Fang being any good. I've never seen anybody use it. And frankly, I had tried all the other weapons and just decided against this one. So if you have used the Fang before and you want to make a case for it, feel free. Comments below. Recommend people try it out. I am personally going to just skip over that. Now, the Dragon's Fist is in the shop, but you'll see on screen here that it swings extremely slowly, does next to no damage. Its perks are not very helpful. In fact, it actually has like similar DPS to the Storm King's Fury, but the Fury has attack speed, crit rating, double crit damage, a very high crit chance. Like, it's got a lot going for it, and the Dragon's Fist just doesn't. It's got pretty good crit chance. You can't get another crit damage perk on this. It's got very slow swing speed. It's you know what I mean. So, and then even with double attack speed and damage, it's still like it swings faster. We solved that issue, but it ran out of perks and it just does no damage at this point. So, no matter how you perk this, I'm not convinced that the Dragon's Fist is at all good. If, again, there's a way to make this good, let me know in the comments below, but I think you should grab it anyway. Any weapon you don't have, get it. Secure that schematic, because someday they could change. They could update the game, you know, make an SMG class, for example, and buff all of those weapons in a different way. You never know what they could do, and having a copy of the weapon is excellent, because you should never just take my word for it. If you have the schematic, try it out for yourself. You know, if you really find that it's a great weapon, then fantastic. But I am kind of spoiled by the fact that I've tried most, if not every weapon in this game, and when I see weapons like this, I don't just see how they perform right now, I compare them to their better alternatives. Like you'll see with the Dragon's Tooth here, it's actually pretty good. I mean, it gets kills. I mean, Paleoluna's buff is pretty significant, so it's helping a lot there. But ultimately, like, the Dragon's Tooth is killing stuff, but when I'm attacking enemies with this, all I'm thinking in my head is how much faster the Ravager swings. See, it has a 0.4 attack speed compared to the the Storm King Tooth's 0.5 swing speed, and the fact that those other weapons like the Ravager, it just does more damage, and of course it does. It's the Storm King's weapon, but when you put a weapon like a mythic sword in the game, it makes every other weapon, every other sword weaker in that regard. They don't compare as well, so it's very tough to recommend these weapons. So the sword is pretty alright. The best perks for this are kind of circumstantial. This was the best we could do, attack speed and damage. I don't even know if you can run crit rating, crit damage on this. You might want to try that for a sword, but Affliction's pretty good for that 45% damage, and again, you know, everything I've said on this, you know, has been spoken. But the previous weapon that I would have totally recommended is the Dragon's Roar. I still kind of agree that this very well may be the most usable weapon in the set. I feel like if you were going to take any weapon from the set and really perk it all the way, perk it properly, for the Dragon's Roar, I would recommend a crit rating, crit damage build. I think you can go damage and fire rate, especially for a tap fire weapon like this, semi-automatic. It is not fully automatic. I think crit rating, crit damage is a bit dodgy. I use it. It's fine, I guess, but, you know, there are a couple of ways to go about it. I went durability on this. I don't know why. It was a long time ago, you guys. I'm thinking maybe fire rate or mag size might be better, but ultimately, this is again, very weak weapon. I won't say too much more on that because I've explained myself pretty clearly at this point, but the Dragon's Roar main benefit in today's day and age is the fact that it has Pierce, so this can shoot through a lot of enemies at once, so you can see that it does next to no damage head-on, you know, head-on versus a smasher, but in a crowd of zombies, especially with the Roman candles, it's kind of good. You know, remember, there is Affliction, so it's constantly ticking damage for every target that you've hit, but it's, you know. So the Dragon's Roar is probably one of the most usable, conventionally good weapons. I think it's like, that's why I said this is one of those weapons that you give the Dragon's Roar more damage, change nothing about it, and it's actually a pretty badass looking weapon, pretty cool weapon overall that I would actually love to use, but as of now, it's basically like a weaker, slower firing buzz cut from my experience. Now, I did say the previous weapon I was going to recommend, because in using all of the weapons today, minus the spear, the Dragon's Fury, the launcher, stood out to me as probably the coolest and most badass usable weapon that there was. It is kind of like the quad launcher. So the quad launcher shoots an enemy for next to no damage, but the pool of fire that it spawns actually ticks for a decent amount, and the Dragon's Fury is no different in the sense that it shoots for next to no damage. Like, I'm hitting for 15,000 right here. Guys, a weak rocket launcher hits for 200,000 at my level, so this is basically nothing. But from what I was experiencing, it actually summons a bunch of fireworks that linger for a very decent amount of time. And what I also noticed is that it stuns enemies in place while it does that. So it's kind of interesting in that regard. If you can get lucky and stun an enemy while they're getting hit by the fireworks, they kind of just stay in place and they can't move away, so they just keep getting damaged by it. So it's actually pretty decent for crowd clearing. It's not immediate. It ticks for like, from, you can see the gameplay, it was like 20 or 30,000, and then they just sort of slowly die. But I thought the Dragon's Fury was probably the most usable, and obviously you can keep spamming shots and double, triple, quadruple up on those fireworks and do even more damage per hit. I think it was a very, very fun weapon. Now for the perks on this, we went double damage because it's a rocket launcher, but since you're constantly ticking with those fireworks, if they are affected by crit rating crit damage, that would definitely be the way to go because they're getting hit over and over and over and over and over again. So that might be definitely a consideration, and I'd probably recommend crit rating crit damage if that's possible, seeing as this is kind of a unique launcher. Now, speaking of fun, the Dragon's Might is, again, another weapon I'd recommend from this set. I know I said I couldn't recommend any of them, but, like, we're really lowering the bar here just so I can talk about these weapons. The Dragon's Might shoots 5 fireworks. You can see the gameplay. You can see exactly what it does. You shoot 5 all at once, and then you reload 1 at a time. It's not fantastic against single targets. It's super RNG dependent, because those fireworks will go anywhere that they want, and you can't always control it. It's more of just a fun weapon when you're shooting into a crowd of enemies. It's not going to do a ton of damage. The RNG is too much for you to ever rely on it, but it can be something to use when you're bored. Like the few times I've ever, I was gonna say one, but the few times that I ever used this weapon were in home base defenses, storm shield defenses, where I was just shooting this blindly into a crowd of zombies. It wasn't needed. We didn't need a ton of damage, but it worked. It was kind of fun to use. It was something I hadn't seen before. But shout out to Don if you remember that. That was a long time ago. But it's not a very, it's more of a fun weapon, you guys. I think I made that clear. Now, I think if I'm counting correctly, this will be the last weapon that I want to speak on, and that is the Dragon's Claw Sniper. We rolled this with a crit rating crit damage build. Skulls had damage to miss monsters and bosses on this. I'm not sure that I would recommend that. I don't know what the 5th perk is, but if you have Affliction as an option there, that might be the way to go. I think crit rating crit damage kind of works because it's, this is a weapon that shoots a target, it sticks a candle into them, or a firework if you will, and then it explodes into an area of effect damage. You can see that it's not exactly doing a ton against a single miss monster, even with that correct 5th perk for it. It's not great for single target damage, and it's pretty okay for crowd clearing. I think if you were ever going to use a Dragon's Claw Sniper, you'd pretty much do what I'm doing here, and that's just hip fire it into a crowd of zombies, and kinda, again, this is probably something you would use for fun in a lower level zone. I'm not exactly sure that any of these weapons are going to be performing too hot in a 140 plus zone. So, as for my recommendation, I don't like to do that because there you have it. You have my thoughts on every single one of your options here. I would appreciate you guys, choosing whatever you want. All of these weapons, they just have their pros and their cons, and it's entirely unique to you. Like, I would personally pick the launcher. I think that's the most fun. But the AR might be, one of your best, especially if you're in a lower level zone. The AR is actually going to be good for a long time. Again, I am comparing these weapons to the best weapons in the game. When you're in Stonewood and Plankerton, it doesn't matter. They're all fine. The Dragon's Tooth is a decent sword if you're a low level. Like, they're all, there are a lot of decisions that you can decide for yourself here, but it's kind of unique on a case-to-case basis. So, my recommendation is officially, it depends. Personally, I'd go with the launcher, but I'd implore you to choose yourself. So, hopefully you guys enjoyed this different kind of video today. I really did go to the effort. I tried out all of these weapons, even though I figured out very early that they were all pretty not great. And I would hope for this video to double up as a best perks video for all of the Dragon's weapons. And even though I never really talked about the spear, but life leech, armor, attack speed, there are like no damage perks on this. I don't know what Skulls was thinking. Maybe he wasn't, because this weapon is, maybe a crit damage crit rating build would work because base 20% crit chance is huge, so every other shot is going to crit. So if you really want to make the spear work, that might be the way to go. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you're new, click like on the video. I make these types of videos pretty often. Let me know what you guys want to see in the comments below. I do have quite a few different videos lined up, like different hero loadouts and a couple of weapons I got planned to talk about. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a nice day, you guys.